The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome, everyone, and I'm very happy to see you all here for the third webinar of our 5-part webinar series for Clarity First, my most recent book that I released. This one on process and performance. As I was creating it, I thought, maybe I should have split this into 2 webinars because there's just so much to talk about on both topics. So this is going to be, a bit of a little rapid pace here, but I'm trying to get all the salient points I think would be most helpful for the range of skill and experience we've got on most of the webinars. So could we please do a quick sound check and just raise your hand on your control panel if you can hear me loud and clear, please? Excellent. Okay. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and put all the hands down. Thank you. Thank you. And let's just get to it. And just a reminder for those of you who maybe haven't taken the Clarity quiz, now that we're getting this far into the webinar series, hopefully you'll see that there may be some gaps between where you are, where your organization is, and where you would like to be. So this is a great way to get a baseline so that you can then put together your own personal action plan and move up the ratings as you get better and better at operating with greater clarity. So I invite you to take the quiz if you haven't already. The book is available kind of everywhere. It's in every major bestseller, venue, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, the independent bookstores, all of that. So if you don't have that, you can get that. And if you are new to the webinar series, we're on number 3, as I mentioned. These are the other 4 of the webinar series, and you can see all the ones that have already played at our webinar page. You'll notice that the URL here, tkmg.com, that is the name that we're evolving into, and there'll be a slow rollout. You can still use ksmartin.com. That still works. It will always work. Or you can make it easy on yourselves and just do tkmg.com. Have a look at those and other webinars. There's a filter on that page, so you can actually filter by topic for value stream mapping, Kaizen, all those types of things. And I hope to see you at the next webinar, which will be on August 2nd on problem solving. And that one, I'm really excited to introduce to you my new kind of question, not new, but a couple years old, my question-based problem solving model that has been working very, very well with groups. All right, so as you may recall, if you were on some of the other webinars, there are 5 parts of the Clarity First model, and it's getting very, very clear on organizational purpose, priorities, process, performance, and problem solving. So we've gone through purpose, priorities, and today we're going to go through process and performance, and then next one will be problem solving. So let's talk about process. It's one of the areas that we go into all types of organizations. We talk with all types of improvement professionals, thousands now over the years. And one of the things that is always striking to me is how little organizations really have their handle on process. I've even been to award-winning lean organizations in one way or another, one award program or another, where when I start asking the question about how well their processes are documented, how current they are, how real-time they're managed, very few organizations answer, hey, we've got it down. It's really good. And I'm a little mystified on why that is, because it really isn't that difficult to do. I think part of it is because it's not very sexy. And I think most people like to go into the new products and all this like new stuff, and they don't work really hard at the fundamentals. And as those of you who read The Outstanding Organization know, the fundamentals are key. If you don't get a solid foundation, you can't build a skyscraper on it without it toppling. So you have to get those fundamentals in place. So, excuse me. Let's first start by talking about what do we mean by process. So a value stream is a very, very large swath of work that goes from some sort of an external customer request to delivering on that request. And it actually doesn't have a clear beginning or end, because value streams may involve getting a supply chain lined up to be able to bring in raw material, or it may be the whole contract negotiation part before a customer actually issues an order. And then downstream, it might be the whole warranty side of a product that's being sold, or it might be servicing a service that's sold. So there's, it's a very large amount of work that crosses all through the organization. There are value stream segments that are parts of that value stream, but it's a very, very big view of the work that passes through an organization. The value stream is comprised of a series of processes. Some are serial and some are in parallel, but it's a series of processes. Oftentimes, processes will reside within one functional area or one department, but many times it actually crosses into multiple departments within a process itself. Then each process is a series of steps or tasks, and those tend to reside in one area, those series of steps and tasks before there's a handoff to another area. But there's lots of granularity. So when we use the word process, oftentimes people refer to a value stream as a macro process. And when they talk about a series of micro steps, they might talk about that as being a process. So one thing that you should do in order to operate with greater clarity, when someone uses the word process, get clear on what level they're talking about. Ask them to define the process they're talking about so that you're speaking the same language and viewing the work through the same lens in terms of the degrees of granularity that it has. Now, the next thing is that when you think about this range of granularity, you need to think about who needs to be involved in making improvements to that. And you need to get very, very clear on that, because what we often do is get people lower in the organization trying to make big level value stream decisions, and leaders getting very involved in micromanaging at a tactical level. And neither one of those is a very good use of resources and good use of minds and creative potential. So what we want to do is keep leadership in the strategic realm, which is looking at high level flow of work across the organization, and they should in fact be very familiar with the value streams, and then allow the front lines to be deeply engaged when you get down to the steps of the process and defining, designing, analyzing how that work is being done. That's the tactical how the work is being done. And if you're going to map the process to get clear about what the process currently is and design a future state, the mapping tools do vary. The value stream mapping would be something you'd use at the strategic macro view, and then metrics-based process mapping or even process flow charts are something you'd use at a tactical level. So again, clarity is essential to really understand what you need to do the work and what the mission of the work is. And I'll talk more about the differences in just a bit here. So let's talk about an example. So let's take hiring, or I'm sorry, this is not the hiring one. I went back and forth on which one to include. This one is a very large, rolling a new customer into a large service organization. So this is all the way from, having a prospective client identified and sales is talking with them, and then you finally start contract negotiations, and then in this case it happens to be an insurance process. So then once the contract's done, then there's this whole phase of communicating the plan options to employees within the client and the enrollment process, and then there's the enrollment process itself, which is very, very big. And then they're servicing the contract after employees are enrolled. So that's a very high level, only 5 steps to the value stream, which is probably a little too high to make substantive improvement decisions from, but it's a high level view of the value stream. Now, each one of these blocks has a series of processes. So negotiate and execute the contract would have a series of processes, and then each of these processes would have a series of steps. And I'm not suggesting that there's only 3 levels of process granularity. Absolutely not. There's infinite levels, and the key to being a astute improvement professional and being able to guide people effectively is to be able to figure out what problem are we trying to solve, first and foremost, where are the gaps that we're trying to close, And then how high do I need to go to close that gap? Or how low do I need to go to close that gap? So it may be if you're trying to close a very tiny service concern between two departments, that would be more at the process level. But if you're looking at overall quality of product, overall financial aspects of a product, and I mean product, I mean good or service, overall flow and delivery of that, you might need to be and probably do need to be at the value stream level. So I just wanted to go a little more into that. Some of you have heard this before, but the word process gets very confused, and I wanted to be clear that when I'm talking about process management, which I'll get to in a moment, I mean at the tactical level. So in most organizations, and some industries are worse than others, there's a series of silos that are these functional areas that aren't necessarily connected. Now you see that this lovely picture, we do have a little bit of connection up here between these, but it's not a very robust connection. And looking at things first and foremost through a value stream lens, which we always recommend when you're looking at process improvement, starting with the value stream, is it becomes the linkage between all of those silos as work is being passed through the organization. And in the spirit of clarity, the thing that is most essential is for senior leadership, and I'm talking vice president and above, to be very, very clear on how the work flows from a request to delivering on that work at a macro level, not a micro level. They don't need to know all the details of the process, but they do need to be able to articulate how work flows and how value is delivered from a customer request to delivering on that request. In most organizations, that degree of clarity does not currently exist. So it's up to us to help leaders gain that clarity because they make far more effective leadership decisions. They may budget differently. They may have a different strategy for business growth. They may actually look at going into different markets once they understand what the operation can and cannot handle current state. They may decide to spend more capital. They may decide to not spend capital. There's all types of decisions that leaders can make more effectively when they understand how value is delivered to customers at a macro level. So when it comes to making improvement, there's a bit of a line in the sand that we draw between strategy and tactics and the what and the how. And so if you look at senior leaders' involvement, again, they don't need to know process the way I'm defining process at a tactical level. They need to know it at a high level, and they need to engage with these types of management practices in order to have that level of clarity on what the organization should be doing and why, what the value stream performance currently is, and what you're going to do about it in order to get better and better and better. At a tactical level, the front lines can be working on, and by the way, you'll notice PDSA problem solving is on both levels. Everyone in the organization needs to be highly proficient at problem solving with the types of problems that are relevant to their role and their level in the organization. So we're not going to ask a frontline person to solve a market share problem. We're also not going to ask a CEO to solve some kind of a long wait time on a call center problem. There's a division of duties that's important, and it's important to keep clear what strategy is versus tactics, but all parties need to be highly proficient. And what we find all too often is that leaders think that they can delegate problem solving to lower levels in the organization or to an improvement team, and they never learn how to be better problem solvers themselves. And that's not good. It's a recipe for slow improvement, if any improvement at all. So that's a little bit of the division of duties. Now you might say, well, there's someone missing here, and it is middle management. They aren't missing, they just straddle the line. So middle management kind of inches their way into strategy, they inch their way down to the front lines because they're closer to the work. If anyone should be incredibly intimate with process, and I mean fully knowledgeable at a process level of what the process is, how it's performing, what needs to be done to make it perform better, it's middle managers. And most middle managers don't have high degrees of process savvy, as I call it. So our job and our mission and it's urgent, I believe, is to get every single middle manager highly proficient in how to look at process, how to break down processes, how to improve processes, how to measure processes, how to manage them on an ongoing basis, and what their role is in checking the process on a regular basis to make sure it still works, and if not, then to lead a cycle of improvement. And I'll talk a little more about that in just a moment. So the other thing to think about when you think about process is that there are, these functional silos that are existing in the organization prior to doing value stream work. And what you can do is view value streams in two levels. There's the core value streams. There's the core value streams that are the, customer-facing value streams, the good or service that makes its way into a customer's hands and they use it. And then there are support value streams that support the delivery of value. So those are the functional areas such as IT, HR, and I'm not talking just functional areas. An IT ticket can pass through many, many hands. Product development passes through many, many hands. Finance, any element of finance passes through many, many hands. So there are those support value streams. And there are also value stream segments that are sometimes worthy to take a look at, because you may not be able to, look at the whole enchilada all at once. It may be too big and you have to break it into components. So it's critical, though, to have absolute clarity around how those value streams are currently performing and then work to improve them. Now, another thing that's important to think about is most organizations aren't even clear about what their value streams are. And so sometimes we have to start with a step to just define what are they. And we often talk with leaders that say, I get this concept a lot. I read your book. I still don't understand what our value streams are. So sometimes you have to go and help them figure that out. And so the way to think about it, and some of you who read Learning to See, this will be familiar, the very first book on value stream mapping, is that you basically list out the basic processes that comprise a value stream, and then you look at the different kinds of products that go through the value stream, different requests, different goods, different services, and you make an X if it passes through that process. And then what you'll find is that anywhere where there's common X's, that tends to be one value stream and that can go through one cycle of improvement. There might be a little nuance, there might be some variation, but generally speaking, it's one value stream. And you have to get clear on this before you can get to process work, because if you don't look at it strategically first and be able to see the whole, then when you get to a process level, you have a high risk of suboptimizing. And yeah, you might fix that process, but it might actually break something downstream, or it might be good and it doesn't break anything, but it also doesn't do anything to affect how a customer is receiving and experiencing the goods and services that you're offering. So it's critical to start and get very, very clear about value streams and value stream performance. Now, I'm going to do just a tiny little bit about value stream mapping, but I want to be clear that when we talk about value stream performance, mapping is only a tiny component to value stream performance. And sometimes people believe that the map is it and that's all there is. That is so not all there is. You have to understand performance in multiple levels. Value stream mapping just enables you to see what's really going on. So value stream mapping enables you, like this picture, to hover high above your workflow across a large swath of your organization and see far more clearly where there are delays, where there's congestion, where there's capacity, how things are flowing, if there's quality, what the financial impact is. All of that is enabled by a value stream map, and you need that level of clarity in order to get to the process level. When you're down in the highway at the process level, you can make all kinds of decisions about what you're going to do between these two road signs, and it may not do anything, like I said before, to really affect the value stream performance. So we have to start high and then go low. Value stream mapping, again, it's a visual tool that allows you to see work, and it allows people to get off that highway and up into the helicopter so they can have a very different view of how the work is actually occurring. So again, I'm super high on value stream mapping, love it. Of course, Mike Osterling and I wrote a book on it. We love it, but it is only one piece of the equation. So from a clarification perspective, when you're looking to make improvement, you want to inch your way more and more and more towards systems thinking. So starting to look at work from a value stream with a value stream lens allows you to get closer and closer to systems thinking so that you're able to make bigger decisions that affect the whole value stream and not just these little micro decisions that don't do anything to affect performance and frankly often don't do anything to affect the financials of an organization. Value stream work often does. So we want to make sure that we're using that value stream lens and thinking holistically so we don't have that sub-optimization, which I mentioned just a bit ago. Now, the value stream map, this is just one map, it helps you visualize and see value stream performance because you're doing some measurement. You're also putting things in their logical sequence. You're also including IT systems and information flow at the top part of the map. So it allows you to see things you simply can't see in just doing the daily work and even in looking at data. You see things through a very different lens. When you're able to visualize the entire value stream, or at least a very big part of it, on a single sheet of paper, and when you've been able to distill and synthesize the complexity of work flowing through an organization, the amount of clarity that that gives, and the freedom and the liberation it gives to be able to finally understand what needs to be done to improve performance is just, it's very powerful stuff. And so, for those of you who aren't using value stream analysis yet, you need to learn it. For those of you who are using it and you may be using it at too low a level, bring it up. It's really important part of organizational performance improvement, and it's just vital. It's vital. So what it does allow you to do, it originated in manufacturing, and I have to say, being heavy in service sector, but increasingly so in manufacturing actually lately. But being heavy in the service sector, I think value stream mapping and being able to see before you go to a process is even more critical to be able to see the true problems that exist. Another thing that happens is, you can see this whole information flow conundrum that this particular organization had. All these disconnected systems, all this redundant data entry. Look at this, step number 4, block 4, process 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 data entry points into systems. I mean, that's just a lot of redundancy. And so, when you look across the value stream, we often see productivity gains, minimum 15%. And oftentimes you can get eventually, it takes a while to get there, months, but eventually you can get sometimes 30 and 40% productivity gains. And in the case of bringing in automation to error-proof a process, sometimes even higher than 40%. So it's a pretty powerful thing to be able to see this. And oftentimes IT staffs and IT leaders have never been able to understand the true disconnects that exist in their systems. So it's a very powerful tool for that, from that purpose as well. So in terms of generating clarity, the kinds of things that happen during value stream analysis, and this is true a bit at process level as well, but there's just a whole lot we see that's not so great. One is that, the current KPIs can be very perverse, and so they're not really helping people, I'm missing a word there, driving the wrong behavior. So these perverse incentives will make people do the wrong thing because they're being measured on something that's driving the wrong behavior. We see it very, very commonly. One example of this was a client where they were being penalized if they didn't get orders into the system quickly enough. And in order to get the order into the system, they had to actually purchase a lot of items. So with no connection to the inventory that they already had, it was part of the process to order. And so they kept ordering in order to get the order into the system for the time clock to start. And then all of a sudden the warehouses just filled to the gills with product that they didn't even need. And you have to be very careful about what you're measuring and make sure that you're measuring things in a way that will drive the right behaviors. And we'll talk about performance, in a bit. Backlogs are far larger than assumed. Quality is far lower than you think. Timestamps don't reflect reality. Sales and operations are working at cross purposes. It goes on and on. And last one that's pretty darn common, that data just sucks. So oftentimes there's a big data cleanup that we need to do in order to get clarity around the current state. Now, back to the map. So it's not about the map. The map is the means. The map is the means to enable conversations, insights, decisions, alignment, and commitment. That's what the map is about. So make sure that you're not getting all kind of toolsy. It's not about the tool. It's about the decisions and the resulting transformation plan that the future state map design enables the team to generate. So it's actually more about that plan and executing on that plan than anything, because that's what gets you results. The map is the means. Okay, so I just want to look at this one question. What are some of the methods used to help scope which value stream to work on? In healthcare, I find it challenging to help teams narrow their scope. So good question. It really depends on the problems you're trying to solve, and what you need to be doing is going to leadership and help leadership, clarify what's not working for the customers and what's not working for the organization. Once you get clear on the problems that need to be solved, the rest of it becomes quite easy. One more question I'll take right now. How do new organizations who are just forming use value stream maps? Yes, it can be used as a means to define how work is going to flow at a high level and what targets you want to achieve, and then build at the process level the processes that will enable you to reach those targets. So, in both cases, existing organizations and brand new organizations, the value stream map becomes a blueprint, like you're building a house. In a new organization, you're starting from the slab. Well, I live in Texas, so we don't have basements. We start from a slab and we build up. And so that value stream map could be your blueprint. And for existing organizations, it's your blueprint for renovation. So it's very helpful for that. Okay, moving on. Now, let's get to the process level. So at the process level, the way I define what makes for a clear process is it's documented, it's current, it's followed, it's consistently monitored, and it's regularly improved. I don't mean once a year. I don't even mean twice a year. I mean on a pretty darn regular basis, it's being improved. And you'll hear in a bit about how you can achieve that in an organization. Most organizations are missing the management practice that allows you to be able to do that. Now, a well-defined process, if you think about a process, we've always said this, and I'll remind everyone that, especially for new people on the webinar, the fundamental act of disrespect that we see most common in organizations isn't the way people are treated. It isn't the way people talk to people. It isn't any of that. It is having processes that don't allow someone to be highly successful. That is a fundamental act of disrespect to the worker. And it's true in all levels of the organization. So the processes need to be safe, efficient, and effective, easy to understand, and easy to perform successfully. If the process is not well designed, they can't perform successfully. And if they can't perform successfully, that doesn't feel so good. That drives disengagement. It creates customer problems because people get frustrated. They leave at the end of the workday, feeling very drained and not wanting to come back the next day. It's just a recipe for a lot of disaster. And so processes actually are at the core of engagement and business performance. So it's so essential. I mean, again, I just sometimes go, I can't believe it. I walk into an organization and there aren't defined processes. I was very fortunate to work for an organization very early in my career that was very process-centric. And I thought everybody was. It wasn't until I became a consultant. And now after 25 years of it, I see an awful lot of Fortune 100 organizations even that are successful in spite of themselves. So imagine how successful everyone could be if they had really clear processes. Now, just to be clear, no pun intended, value stream maps and process flow charts are very, very different for the obvious reasons I've already said, the level of people that are involved, strategy versus tactics, etc. I'm not saying process flow charts are valuable. They actually are very valuable as job aids and to define standard work, but they are not value stream maps. Value stream maps are also not swim lane process maps. You do need to take a look at swim lane process maps for some of your processes to truly understand them and to improve them. But that's not a value stream map. That is a process map. Metrics-based process mapping is a variation on a process flow chart because it's got metrics aligned inside or in part of the map in itself. And so, most of you are probably aware that we've got a book out on that and webinars on that are free. All the webinars are free. You can take a look at that. So you have a lot of different ways that you can define a process and be able to see processes so you can be more clear about the current state and also what you're going to do about it to make a better future state. So you need to do one of those, either a swim lane map, a metrics-based process map, a flow chart. You need to do maybe even a combination of those in order to define what the process actually should be performed as. So standard work is the lean terminology that replaces the old school P&P, policy and procedure, SOP, standard operating procedure, any variation of that. Standard work is different in that it's just the facts, ma'am. It's not these big wordy documents that no one reads, and it's very visual. So those are the two key traits of standard work and why it's different from traditional policies and procedures that nobody reads after their first day on the work after they've fallen asleep reading the procedure manual. So standard work is also posted at the site of use. So it's posted at the Gemba. It may be resident within a computer system in order to archive it and keep version control up to date and all of that, but it is physically at the place where work is being done. And it reflects the best known way, the current best known way to operate that minimizes errors, maximizes productivity, and allows all workers that are performing those processes to be highly successful. So you'll see here one kind of template that is a little more like a TWI, training within industry format. We don't use this very often, but we do use it in clients where they have a history of and they've been through TWI training. We'll use this as our format, and I will show you in a bit our new format that we're using in most cases. Now, one of the things that's important to think about standard work. So first of all, let me just say this. Over standardization is as bad as under standardization. So no one is trying to make people so inflexible that they can't make a move. And if the standard work doesn't work for a situation, then it needs to be improved, or there needs to be variation built into the standard work for different conditions. So sometimes people get kind of a little crazy with standard work and get really rigid and in cement, and it needs to work. The process needs to be successful. So you have to, the standard work needs to mirror how the process should work to be successful. The reality is, if you try to operate without standard work, you're going to get high degrees of variation, lack of predictability, and that puts a lot of strain on an organization. It creates organizational drag. So you want to be able to have this very predictable way of operating for several reasons. I mean, one is it's easier to train people. One is it's easier to pivot when you need to make an improvement because you have a known way. And one is that it guarantees you consistent output and outcomes. So what happens if you put standard work in place once you finally get it and you don't manage it tightly, you'll go back to the old ways. So that's the universal law of entropy, where everything in nature kind of devolves back into chaos if it's not managed. And so this is really true in business. All systems need to have some sort of ongoing monitoring and maintenance to keep them operating the way they should. So many of you have probably seen this, a variation of this little car visual that shows process as the wheels of the car. And when you go to make an improvement, so you're basically moving from one known way of operating to another known way of operating, If you don't have good standard work to be as the, serve as the wedge, then the car is going to roll back downhill. So standard work becomes critical, and standard work is a direct reflection of what the process should be, how the process should be performed on a consistent basis. Now, the other thing that's important is that standard work should be evident and in use and current and documented and being actively improved for nearly every process in the organization. So for those of you that are going, oy vey, we don't have much of anything right now. We have a lot of processes. This is a little overwhelming. It is. So what you have to do is you have to just take it piece by piece by piece, one foot in front of the other, one process at a time, and little by little you'll get there. And you have to build the infrastructure so that when you get a process documented and improved and in use, you can't just like ignore it and go on to the next 9 million processes you've got to document. You have to have the infrastructure in place to manage it. So let's talk about some of the best known practices for standard work. One is, and I want to clear this up, this is a kind of funky terminology thing that bugs me in the lean community, but it is what it is. It's very easy to confuse standard work versus work standards. So let me try to be clear. Standard work are the steps that you go through to get something accomplished. So step 1, step 2, step 3. That's the standard work. Work standards are the criteria that need to be met while doing the work, while going through those steps. So for example, if you're in a manufacturing operation and if a part needs to be angled, if you're, let's say it's assembly and you're assembling something and one part needs to be at a certain angle to the other part that you're putting together, that's the standard. That angle matters a lot, and that's the standard. So you would note that in the standard work. When you get to that step, you would note what the standard is. Healthcare example, phlebotomy, drawing blood. The bevel of the needle, the opening of the needle, should always be up for various reasons. One is it's better flow. One is it doesn't hurt the patient as much. One is it lessens the risk of clotting. There's all kinds of reasons to do that. Well, that's the standard. The bevel must be up, and so forth. I mean, you can have standards on calls where when the person picks up the phone, when the employee answers the phone, the first words out of his or her mouth are always these 5 words. All kinds of things are standards, but it's within the standard work that you see those. Occasionally, there are so many standards for a step that you have a companion document that on the computer system you hyperlink to, and on the written, the physical, you just have another sheet of paper that refers to that set of standards for that step. So it has to include the work standards. Next, it needs to highlight visually new process components or common areas where errors occur. So you'll see here, this happens to be standard work for data entry and getting a new client on board. And you'll see that there's some red highlighting around these new areas that were created in the computer system. And in one case, and actually I think it's on the next page of this one, which you don't have, in one case, the computer didn't have a hard stop where information needed to be entered, and it really needed to be entered to serve the customer. And so they highlighted the fact that that is a field that they were going to build a hard stop in it eventually, but at the current state it didn't have it. So you want to highlight any error proofing whatsoever. You want to highlight that. Link to job aids. So job aids are a subset of standard work. They are checklists, cheat sheets, laminated cards, drawings, anything that's like a memory jogger or a guide to help someone do the work more effectively is a job aid. And that can be incorporated if it's brief within the standard work, or it can be a companion piece that is at the point of use where the work is being done. It needs to be physical. Gemba is the word for where the work is done or where the action is. There needs to be physical copies of the standard work right there, not people digging in a computer. The only exception is if it's a workplace where they have monitors right at where the work is being done that have the standard work up on them, and people are looking at the monitor in order to do the standard work. That works, but in many service sector operations, that's not the case. There needs to be a sole owner. This one is the one that trips up a lot of organizations. A sole owner accountable for measurement and management. You cannot have clarity around processes if you don't have one person who is responsible for making sure that the process is being measured, and when it's not performing as it should, that they're leading ongoing improvement cycles, and that they're managing it on a regular basis, making sure standard work is updated, version control, distributed, everyone's trained. You're not just sending it as an attachment on email. You're actually working with people to help them understand it. All of that is within the purview of a process owner. Supervisors, what's their role? Well, they're accountable for a process we call checking. So supervisors, managers, team leads are responsible for making sure the people doing the work are doing the work consistently and according to the standard work, and they're meeting the standards that are defined. And if they aren't, then they collaborate with the process owner. The process owner then puts together a team of people to make improvement, cross-functional usually, and they make improvement, they update the standard work, and then the rest, the cycle begins. So checking is a very important part of daily management. It also means, I grew up in process work back in the 80s, so I've been around process a long time. And for many, many decades, we were looking at process audits as the way to check processes to make sure they're current. No. It never worked. You can't look at a process once every 6 months or once a quarter or once a year and expect it to be good, because conditions change very, very frequently. And so, process may make sense with one set of conditions and not at all with another set of conditions. So you have to do daily management in order to get those processes well just managed and actually performing as they should. So this is now our new template that we're using in most cases. We're trying, we always experiment. We are PDSA fans, and so we're trying to get something that is easy enough for organizations that are especially new to standard work. Don't overcomplicate it, but make sure that it includes everything that it needs to include. So we're down to 3 columns now. One that's the step itself, and standards would be listed either within the step, or it could be listed in the second column, which are key points, reminders, reasons. Like sometimes why you do something a certain way is critical for the person's understanding and to get it done consistently. And then visuals. So not every step has a visual. Visuals need to be highly relevant, and they need to be visual. So meaning you have to be able to see them. So sometimes this happens to be the beginning of a portrait style standard work template. We also have landscape style. We also have them on legal when you need a lot of space. We also have some where it's not 3 columns, it's just one left to right, because the visuals have to go left to right in order for them to be readable. So you have to make sure these things are all very, very elegant, relevant, just the facts, ma'am, in order for someone to be highly successful doing the work. And you should not mandate a template. Actually, the only thing we mandate to clients, or we suggest that they mandate, is that the header is the same, so you have the same look and feel across the organization, and the same numbering system and version control system and all that. That's the only thing that we suggest. And then we actually allow and suggest departments vary their standard work based on the real estate that they need to properly communicate what the process is and what the visuals are. I'm going to go to questions in just a minute. Okay, yes, I'm going to go to questions right now because I see a whole lot coming in. What does monitor a process mean? Well, that means overseeing it according to how it's supposed to perform. So we're about to move into performance, and I'll come back to this question at the end. So there's some sort of a target that you want to have on every process, or multiple targets, and monitoring it means looking real time consistently to see if it's meeting those targets, and if not, why not? So that type of thing. Another question is, what form does standard work take for more complex processes? So if you mean variation in complex processes, each variant typically has its own standard work. If you mean that there just are lots of handoffs with lots of people involved, you can add a column. We often do this in complex processes where it's a very narrow column that says who does it. so it becomes more clear who does it, and then you show this linear handoff back and forth and back and forth. When there are parallel activities, you can just use like a bracket to show that these two things are happening in parallel, and you can number them for ease, like 1A and 1B, 1C in the standard work to show that that work is happening concurrently. You just have to think about a brand new, this is the key litmus test, brand new person to the organization, very little experience in whatever the work is. What is the most effective way to get that person up to speed as quickly as possible and performing at very high levels? That's the bar that you need to hit in creating standard work. Can I show the best practices again? Yes, I absolutely can. There we go. And I'm going to go on to some questions while that's showing. At what point do you introduce cycle time and takt time into the work? Oh, good questions. So first of all, we only use takt time in high production environments. We do use takt time in some low production environments when it's very, very critical to meet a specific type of customer need. But we are, the days of believing that in the service sector you have to use takt, hopefully they're over. It's very helpful in high production environments, but it's not very helpful in creative processes, and like you would never have takt time in surgery. Even the same surgery, you would never expect takt time. You just can't. That would be silly. So you introduce it when you need it. How to best organize and catalog collections of standard work? Good question. We recommend something like SharePoint. We've been searching for an actual process management system for a while. We've looked at a lot that are out there. We are not happy with any of them that we've seen. We don't think they're effective, so we just go back to SharePoint or something like that. That's an intranet that the organization can control who has view-only rights and who has edit rights. Main life equals KPI age, distance to the beach. I don't know what that means. Does this template can be used for the 4th S of 5S methodology? I think it's great. Yes, of course you can. Where can I see the video of the webinar? So all the webinars are on our website. That's tkmg.com or ksmartin.com. Both of them work now. There's a webinar page. There's filters. They're all there. They're on Vimeo, our Vimeo channel. They're on YouTube. Actually, they're not all on YouTube yet. I've been having some YouTube problems. And the slides are on SlideShare. All those social media sites are on the upper right-hand corner of our website. Last question. What level of the organization should create the product and process matrix? You mean for defining value streams? In that case, I typically use manager and above, often director level, and then we run it by executives to see if it rings true to them. I'm going to skip the next couple questions, so I'm going to move on. Okay, performance. So performance is pretty critical. Imagine, my apologies for anyone who's not a U.S. Football fan, because I come from Pittsburgh. Football's in my blood. Went to Penn State. Football's in my blood. You can substitute basketball, baseball, soccer, aka football, anything you want here. Imagine going to a game and having no idea what is going on. You don't know what the score is. In the case of football, you don't know what down it is. You don't know how many yards to go there are. You don't know what quarter it is. You have no idea. That's how a lot of organizations run, with people having no clarity about how they're actually performing. And it is really a bad deal, because there's no way you can perform at high levels if you don't know where you are and where you should be. So when you think about football games, people often think, well, the scoreboard's just for the audience. It doesn't matter. No, that scoreboard, the quarterback monitors based on that scoreboard, the team monitors based on that scoreboard, even the referees monitor based on the scoreboard. So that scoreboard is critical for everyone to be aligned around what they have to do and why. And the fact that we don't have the same kind of thinking in organizations is just quite silly now, isn't it? So we need to help everyone get over this fear of visualizing information and enabling clarity. So one of the things I say is, there's so much data, but so little information. And so I'd like to start by talking about data. So there are really three different distinct types of data that are important in an organization: demand data, status data, and outcomes data. When we use the term KPIs, or key performance indicators, that typically refers to outcomes data, although it could also be a status data, but it is not demand data. Let me explain. Demand data is understanding the current state so that you can make better decisions. So it might be staffing decisions, it might be balancing work decisions, it might be rethinking which customer groups you want to place where, any number of things. You need to be clear what the demand is. The demand, depending on the kind of volume you've got, the demand could be looking at hourly demand, it could be daily demand, it could be weekly demand, it could be monthly demand. It really does depend on what you're trying to figure out. But you need to know how you're actually performing in terms of the incoming work that's hitting the organization or the work team. Critical. The other thing that makes demand data important is that most of the time we find that people are not staffing to demand. And so you really need to understand the incoming demand and then marry that up with the staffing schedules and the number of people doing various jobs in order to see whether you are or aren't in sync with the demand. In this case, they're definitely not in sync. So the gray bars are as people are arriving. The blue bars are as staff is available. The red bars are actually as the schedule was set versus actual arrival of staff. And you can see there's a pretty big disconnect between the demand coming in and the staff as they've been scheduled. Another thing in looking at current state and getting very, very clear is doing this kind of analysis where you may find that operations this is manufacturing, operations is, kind of crushed under this big, influx of orders, and then no orders, then orders, and then no orders. And we see this a lot in manufacturing. And so this organization was feeling like there was nothing they could do about it, and they were kind of blaming the customers, frankly. And then all of a sudden, when we started digging deeper into the current state and learned about the rebate program, we started being able to show them, well, look, you're spiking every time you do a rebate program. So you either have to find a different way to incent your customers to level the demand, or you need to prepare the operation by allowing them to ramp up and ramp down. But ideally, you level this out a bit. So they had no idea that there was a correlation between those two occurrences. It's very interesting when you get deep into current state. You get very, very clear. This shows an analysis of product moving around a very complex operation. And it was in order to figure out why product wasn't being delivered to the customers on time and why product was actually going in reverse. So you see here, warehouse 2 sends directly into the market, but then DC3 is sending back to the warehouse because they didn't have good handle on inventory. So again, absolute clarity is essential to understand the current state. This visual is showing handoffs in terms of approvals. So current state, number of people that have to approve work, a specific kind of work, and then the design for the future state, being clear on what is going to be happening. Again, we as an improvement group and leaders that have improvement in our blood, we have to get better and better and better at visualizing the current state so that we can see how we're actually performing. Now that's demand data. Status data is things like the number of projects completed, the percentage of business applications pending, etc. So this is showing kind of where you are. Now, sometimes status data can be very KPI-like and outcome data because you're showing where you are in comparison to where you want to be, and it's a leading indicator about outcomes. So sometimes status data is a KPI. But definitely demand data is not a KPI. I just want to be very clear about that. Demand is one thing, how you're performing is another thing. Now, on KPI boards, there's been a lot of chatter about that. I'm really into KPI boards, but they are usually fairly ineffective, what we see as far as what's on the board and how they're being managed. We're big believers here of having 3 or 2 levels, depending on the size of the organization. Sometimes, rarely, 4 levels of scorecards on gigantic organizations that show how they're performing. And the thing that's key is that they need to show a balanced view that shows operational and financial metrics. This is a level 3 scorecard, so this is a high level, executive level scorecard. And they need to include measures that are both critical to customer and critical to the business. So oftentimes we see just financial and or just critical to business, and we don't see operational, we don't see critical to customer, and that's a big miss. So in this case, you'll notice critical to customer and critical to operations is at the top, and then the financial critical to business is at the bottom to send a strong message on what really matters. In our view, financials are an outcome of excellent operations. Financials are the result of excellent operations. So yes, you want to look at financials, but you don't want to look solely at financials because you'll never get there if you have issues that are being covered up in the operation. Now, that's a senior level. This is executive level view of the whole organization at a glance. At a department level, we are big believers in daily management, and we always have a series of 2 to 5 KPIs at a department level or team level on the DMS boards. For those of you who want to learn more about DMS, I've got an actual webinar that was, I think, last year on DMS. You can look at that online. In any number of those areas, including our website. And they need to be very clearly defined, and they need to be, again, relevant to what problems you want to surface and what types of improvement you want to hit. KPIs, in our view, need to almost always be line charts with the x-axis, the horizontal axis, being a time continuum, either daily, weekly, monthly, annual, whatever it might be, hourly sometimes, because that's what you want to see is like it's a run chart. This is, I'm showing you one of our Asia clients, and this is their daily management board, and they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They've actually dropped down to 4 now, KPIs. It was just, they were having a hard time really paying close attention to all 5. So they dropped 1, which we advised, we thought was a really good move. And you can see that they're able to track their performance on a regular basis. Teams need to know their performance. They need to not have a blank scorecard or scoreboard or nothing at all. Now, I want to show you one more thing that's important for all of you listening to help teams, once they define the KPIs, to understand how to visually display them so they're very, very clear and they drive, very quick understanding. There's a contract amendment turnaround time table that shows what the target is, and then it shows by week what they were for 3 months. You can figure it out. You can kind of see that they're doing better or they're not doing as well. You can see it okay. But look at the same data now displayed this way. Same data. So we have request to draft, draft to execution, and we now have a time continuum, and we have a visual where we can clearly see if we're going down, going up, or it's erratic. And with a target clearly identified, it's just so much easier to see these types of visual graphs and charts. Now you can use lines or you can use bar charts. We tend to use lines if it won't overcomplicate, and we use stacked bar charts if line charts would be too much visual noise. So you see them together, look at the difference in how your brain can grasp the information, how clear it is what the current performance is. Very important. All right. Daily management is helpful on a regular basis to see where the gaps are, and it drives ongoing improvement of the standard work. So here's where it all connects together. The KPIs you're using those to monitor performance, and then you're marrying up your standard work so that you get better and better at closing the gaps between where you are and what the target condition is. All right, so daily huddles, again, these are where you look at the teams, look at the KPIs, they talk about the gaps that exist, not why they exist. There's no problem solving done in the huddles, but you're just constantly looking to close gaps. And once those gaps get pretty well closed and they're stable, then you raise the bar and you raise the target or lower the target, depending on the type of metric. Very important to have KPIs at a local level as well as at the company level. Now, that's it for right now. I'm going to take a few more questions. Again, I do, recognize that that was a lot in a very short amount of time, and there's a lot I had to cut. So, this isn't just a book promotion, but there is a lot in that book that can help you, kind of get greater detail about all of these different topics. I do hope you have some good pearls that you can take away today and start playing around with in your organization. Don't forget to take the quiz if you haven't yet. And what could you accomplish with greater clarity? This is process and performance. All right, let's see. Let's see if there's any questions coming in. Well, someone's rubbing my nose in the fact that it's 72 degrees in Encinitas in San Diego, where I used to live. And it's, I don't know what it is right now in Dallas. I think 103 or so, somewhere around there. So thank you for that reminder. Standard work is the same as a process. Not exactly. Standard work is a reflection of the process. So it's the way to document the process so that everyone can understand what the steps are, and there's a visual, so it's very clear what needs to be done. So standard work is the representation of the process. I hope that helps. Any more questions? We've got 1 minute. Okay. Okay, you're welcome. Thank you for everyone that's saying thank you. You're welcome, you're welcome, you're welcome. Okay, here's a question. Can a supervisor manager ever also serve as the process owner? Yes, good question, Robin. Yes, they can. You just need to be careful and make sure that they have the bandwidth to be the person that is, kind of really watching process performance. They're, certainly the manager, supervisor, team lead's job is to check and make sure people are following the process and then raise the flag when the process needs to go through a round of improvement. That's their job. If they can also handle leading improvement, they can. The one thing about it is they have to make sure that they're leading it properly and that it's cross-functional in nature and all those things. So as long as they can do all that, yes, it can be. How techniques do you use to define activities to support the daily management system? I don't understand that question. I'm sorry. Maybe you can reword that. The video, I've mentioned that a couple times. The videos are on our website. They're on all of our social media sites, which you can get from our webpage, our homepage, TKMG.com is the easiest one. Can standard work deal with delays that emanate from the customer? Not directly, because your standard work is about how you do the work. However, if there are conversations between a call center or a sales team and customers, you can actually have talking points for those conversations as part of your standard work. Those would be the standards, and that may help reduce the delays from the customer because they've had clearer instruction up front, if that makes sense. Let's see, validity of the data measured. How do we make sure that the data measured? I could go on and on about this. Really good question, Carlos. Very difficult. You have to be a dog going after a bone, and you have to almost develop a sixth sense about data. I mean, we're dealing with a client right now where the data is very suspect. Every time we get a data set, we just go and does this pass the sniff test? Does this ring true? And a lot of times we're able to do kind of subsequent measurement that either prove or disprove the data we got. The process owner does not become the process police per se. They become the process coordinator or the facilitator of the work because they're not the Gestapo trying to manage the process that way. I'm so sorry, we do have to go. These are great questions. Thank you, everyone. I really appreciate you being here. I hope to see you on the next one for problem solving. Have a great day, evening, or night, wherever you are. Thank you. Bye-bye.